Did Thai people really ride elephants to school? Somewhere in the world tonight, there is still someone who quietly believes that children in Thailand once rode elephants to school. And strangely enough, that misunderstanding says more about human imagination than it does about Thailand itself. For centuries, distant countries imagined Thailand as a mysterious tropical kingdom hidden beneath monsoon clouds and endless jungle mist. To many outsiders, Thailand felt less like a real country and more like a dream. A land of golden temples glowing beneath candlelight. A land where monks walked silently at sunrise. A land where rivers moved like roads. And somewhere inside those old imaginations, there were always elephants. Huge shadows moving slowly through green forests beneath tropical rain. Gentle giants standing beside wooden villages. Creatures so enormous, so ancient, so unforgettable, that eventually people far away began imagining elephants everywhere. Even outside schools, even beside children, even in ordinary life. And somehow, the strange little myth was born that somewhere in Thailand, children rode elephants to school. But tonight, beneath the sound of distant thunder and drifting rain, inside a quiet wooden house in northern Thailand, an old man is about to tell his grandson the real story behind that misunderstanding. And perhaps, by the end of this long rainy night, we may understand not only Thailand a little better, but also the way human beings imagine one another across oceans, cultures, and time itself. Rain fell softly across the northern countryside. The sound moved gently over rice fields, bamboo fences, banana trees, and sleeping rooftops beneath the dark tropical sky. Crickets sang endlessly behind an old wooden house standing near the edge of a muddy field. The air smelled of wet earth. Fresh rainwater dripped slowly from the roof into clay jars below. Beyond the darkness, frogs called to one another from distant flooded paddies. Inside the small upstairs bedroom, warm lantern light flickered softly against old wooden walls stained by many rainy seasons. A little boy named Nat lay beneath a thin cotton blanket beside his grandfather. The old man sat quietly near the open window. His skin was darkened by decades beneath the Thai sun. Deep lines crossed his face like rivers on an old map. In his weathered hands, a woven palm fan moved slowly back and forth, stirring the cool night air. Outside, thunder rolled softly, somewhere far away in the mountains. Nat stared at the ceiling for a long moment before finally speaking. "Grandpa, do foreigners really think Thai people ride elephants to school?" The old man laughed quietly beneath his breath. Not loudly, not mockingly, just the soft laugh of someone remembering how strange the world could sometimes be. "A long time ago," he said gently, "many foreigners truly believe that." Nat burst into sleepy laughter. "That's ridiculous." The old man smiled. "It sounds ridiculous to us." The rain became slightly heavier. Tiny droplets rattled softly against the old tin roof. But for people who had never seen Thailand with their own eyes, the grandfather continued. "Our country once looked very different in their imagination." Nat rolled closer beneath the blanket. What did they think Thailand looked like? The old man looked out toward the dark rice fields. For a few seconds, he said nothing. Only rain, only frogs, only the soft whisper of bamboo moving in the wind. Then, finally, they imagined jungles. His voice became slower now, more distant, endless jungles. Many decades earlier, long before the internet, long before smartphones, and long before airplanes carried millions of tourists across the world every year, Thailand was mysterious to much of the outside world. People in Europe and America often learned about Siam, the old name for Thailand, through postcards, travel journals, documentaries, adventure novels, and exaggerated stories from travelers returning home across the sea. And those stories almost always contained the same things: golden temples, dense forests, river markets, exotic animals, and elephants, always elephants, gigantic creatures standing beside villagers beneath tropical sunlight. Photographs showed elephants carrying heavy logs through jungle rivers. Postcards showed elephants beside temples covered in gold. Adventure books described explorers disappearing into forests where elephants moved silently through morning fog. To people who had never seen Thailand themselves, those images slowly became the country itself. And because humans naturally fill empty spaces with imagination, many foreigners eventually assumed elephants must be everywhere. The old man smiled softly. Some people probably thought elephants waited outside schools like buses. Nat laughed again. That would be impossible. Yes, the old man chuckled. But imagination is powerful. Lightning flashed faintly beyond the distant hills. For a brief second, pale blue light spilled through the wooden window. The rain continued falling steadily across the countryside. Grandpa, him? Did Thai people ever really ride elephants? The old man nodded slowly. Oh yes. Nat's eyes widened. Really? Yes. The grandfather leaned back gently against the wooden wall. In some places, especially deep forests or mountain villages, elephants were once very important. His voice softened into memory. They carried logs from the jungle. They crossed rivers. They traveled through places where roads didn't exist yet. The old man paused, and sometimes people rode them. Nat stared silently. Outside, wind drifted through the banana trees. When I was a boy, the grandfather whispered, I once woke before sunrise and saw elephants walking through our village. The little boy immediately sat up slightly. You really saw them? Yes. The old man smiled faintly. There was thick white fog everywhere. The ground was wet from rain, and out of the mist came these enormous shadows. Nat listened carefully. The bells around their necks made soft sounds. The grandfather closed his eyes, as though hearing them again. Clink, clink, clink. The mahouts walked beside them holding lanterns, and the elephants moved slowly through the muddy road while steam rose from their bodies into the cold morning air. For a moment, the room became quiet except for the rain. To me, the old man whispered, they looked like creatures from another world. Nat imagined giant elephants emerging from white fog beneath lantern light. It sounded magical, almost unreal. But they weren't pets, the grandfather continued. They were workers, companions, part of survival. In those days, an elephant could be as valuable as a truck today. Nat slowly nodded. The rain softened briefly before growing heavier once again. Water rushed from the roof outside in silver streams. But foreigners didn't always understand the difference between seeing elephants sometimes. The old man said, and seeing elephants everywhere. Nat giggled sleepily. So they imagined the whole country riding elephants. Exactly. The old man laughed softly. Humans often do that. The lantern flame flickered in the wind. Sometimes people see one interesting thing about a country. He continued, and then they imagine the entire country through that single image. Nat thought carefully, like thinking all Americans are cowboys. The grandfather burst into warm laughter. Yes, exactly like that. The little boy smiled proudly. Outside, thunder rolled lower now. The storm was moving closer. Wind pushed rain against the side of the wooden house. Grandpa? Yes? Why do people remember strange things more than normal things? The old man became quiet. Then, slowly, because strange things stay inside memory longer. The rain whispered endlessly across the roof. If someone visits another country and sees something completely different from home, the grandfather explained, that image becomes powerful. Elephants became Thailand's image, not because elephants were everywhere, but because elephants were unforgettable. The room glowed softly beneath the lantern light. Nat slowly rested his head against his grandfather's arm. Outside, the countryside breathed beneath rain and darkness. But sometimes, the old man whispered, beautiful images can slowly become misunderstandings. The little boy looked up. How? The grandfather sighed softly. When people know only one side of a country, he said, they stop seeing the real people living there. Nat listened carefully. Many foreigners imagined Thailand as only jungle, but Thailand also had cities, schools, universities, doctors, artists, markets, writers, families, students, dreams. The old man smiled gently. Thailand was always more complicated than postcards. The storm outside slowly began drifting away. The thunder became quieter now. Far away across the fields, dogs barked lazily at the night. Grandpa, Do foreigners still think that now? The old man chuckled. Some do, especially people who have never visited Asia before. Nat laughed. What happens when they finally come here? The old man smiled toward the darkness beyond the window. They become surprised. Why? Because Bangkok is not what many of them imagined. The old man's voice became calm and distant again. Instead of elephants, they find traffic. Nat laughed immediately. And trains. And skyscrapers. And shopping malls glowing all night. And cafe full of students using laptops. And motorcycles racing through crowded streets beneath neon signs. The old man shook his head softly with amusement. Many foreigners arrived expecting jungle adventures. He said, and instead, they find one of the busiest cities in the world. The little boy smiled sleepily. Bangkok sounds loud. The grandfather laughed quietly. It is. Outside, the storm finally began calming. Rain softened into a gentle rhythm again. But that's the interesting thing about Thailand, the old man continued. It holds many worlds at the same time. The lantern light trembled softly. In one place, you find giant shopping center brighter than daylight. In another place, farmers still plant rice beside water buffalo beneath the sunrise. In one neighborhood, monks walk silently collecting alms at dawn. And just a few streets away, trains fly above traffic while music pours from crowded night markets. Nat closed his eyes while listening. The grandfather's voice rose and fell slowly like the rain itself. Old worlds and new worlds still live beside one another here. The little boy yawned quietly. Grandpa, yes? Why do Thai people still love elephants so much? The old man looked toward the dark sky. For a moment, he did not answer. Only rainwater dripping outside. Only insects singing in the fields. Then finally, because elephants are not just animals to Thai people. Nat opened his eyes slightly. Then what are they? The old man's expression softened deeply. They are memory. The room became still. Elephants walked beside our history. They appear in ancient kingdoms, in old battles, in temple carvings, in folk songs, in stories grandparents tell children before sleep. The grandfather smiled faintly. Some countries are remembered for mountains, some for oceans, some for food. But Thailand, he whispered, is remembered partly through elephants. Nat listened silently, and maybe that's why the misunderstanding lasted so long. The rain outside faded softer and softer. Now only frogs could be heard beyond the dark rice fields. The little boy's eyelids became heavy. Grandpa? Him? If someone asks me someday whether Thai children ride elephants to school, the old man smiled. What should I tell them? The grandfather laughed softly beneath his breath. Then he answered slowly. Tell them no. We never rode elephants to school. He paused gently. But tell them something else too. Nat waited sleepily. Tell them Thailand grew up beside the stories of elephants. The little boy smiled beneath his blanket. Outside, the final rain slowly disappeared into the warm tropical night. Mist drifted quietly over the rice fields once more. The village became still. And somewhere inside the deep silence of northern Thailand, it almost felt as though the slow footsteps of ancient elephants were still moving gently through memory itself. Soft, heavy, endless. Like old stories passed carefully from one generation to another beneath the sound of rain. Thailand is full of stories hidden in ordinary places. If you would like to discover more of them together, please subscribe to Thailand Through Eyes. And if there is somewhere in Thailand you wish to visit through story, leave your suggestion below. Perhaps our next journey will begin there.